So, I'm Physical here now to say that I have recently heard of the sad news that John Blanche has passed away. It is such a shame that we have lost an amazing man, really. The guy was, he was the Grand Master of Grimdark. He had that title for a reason, because he was there since day one and pretty much gave Warhammer its face. But before he left, again, he gave us an amazing bloody gallery of art. But he also gave us paints. John Blanche worked with Army Painter quite recently, until his passing, with to giving a whole bunch of paints. There's currently 40 available right now, if you want to grab them. And for this video, except for like 3 things, is nothing but paints found in that John Blanche sets. So, let's start, shall we? Right, I kind of forgot to mention Death Skulls and Blood Angels. That's what we're doing. I'm using the 2nd edition models I've got.
To start, it's a simple all-over primer of Raven Black for both the Orc and the Space Marine. Since it's the summer, I have decided to go on a little walk outside, but while I do so, grab all of these paints and get ready to do the base step. Begin with some Bloodthorn, going over all of the armour of the Space Marine. You may need to get some few coats in order to get a full coverage. Move on to the Orc now, use some Blight Green over all of the visible skin. As always, a few thin coats are useful. Even though I'm using 2nd edition models, this tutorial is useful for the modern ones. Immediately forgetting to do a result shot. Use the darkness now for both models, for both the blue armour of the Orc, but also as a black for both models. Curse of VTuber scuff, I guess. Anyway, use Sunburst Ochre over the trim and Aquila of the Blood Angel. Back to both models with some Banshee Brown, going over all the areas of leather, being careful as they are in small and hard to reach areas. Sorry for being constantly out of focus, but use some ash roots only on the Orc as it is being used on the road of the chopper. Now onto the only metallics of the video, starting with the heavy metal, going over all the guns, the Orc scale mail, and even any remaining gubbins that would work as steel on both models. And finally, Emperor's Gold. This is simply going over the nozzle of the flamer, but also any accessory skull on both models. Also the hilts on any visible knives. I forgot to say that ash root is also used on the horns of the Orc. But now onto shading. Fewer paints, but they cover all if not most of the painted areas. So let's continue. Start the shading with Vine Root Shade. This is simply going over all the red found on the Space Marine. Try to aim mostly for the recesses. After that is some Grove Hollow Shade, going over all of the green skins. Green skin. Huh. Next, use some Voodoo Shade. Use this over both of the brown tones, as well as the yellow on the Space Marine. Now a slightly intricate parts. First, use Grimdark Shadow over all of the steel paint, then use it again, but for any of the darkness areas you want to keep as black. With the last paint for this step being Warm Skin Shade, this is simply going over all of the visible gold on both models. And now layering time. I've decided to do a lot more work this time. Kinda because I decided to show some extra detail on this, but it should be easy to follow and a lot more fun. So let's continue. Beginning this step with Fiery Vermilion, going over all of the red areas as a somewhat base coat, going over areas where sunlight would hit the most. I also use this paint for the orc's eyes. Next I used Ember Veil as a simple edge highlight over all those areas I painted with Vermilion. Follow it up with Thicket Grove, simply going over the orc skin as edge highlights. Kinda like giving a look of a traditional black orc skin actually. On to all the blue now. I began with some Shadowthorn in 2 different rays, as layers like Vermilion and as an edge highlight for all of the black. And some Frostveil now, being used as edge highlights for only the blue. Up next is the yellows, beginning with Moonbeam Yellow as the same way as Shadowthorn and Fiery Vermilion. With Sunpearl as the edge highlights, of course. This will be the last set of paints needed for the style of layering. Continuing with our regular style, I used Root Path as the edge highlights of the leather on both models. Back to the orc with some Umber Root. This is being used over all the ridden areas. Still with the orc, I used some Ivory Whites over all of the teeth, horns and nails I could find on the model. Time to be super careful now with the Space Marine, starting with some Midnight Olive over the entire lens. Then some Glade Shard as tiny stipples over the olive to finish the Blood Angel. As a final layer, use some watered down Grim Rust over all of the different bits of metal on the orc. Then we can move on to basing. Now onto basing. While I could have gone for a more Armageddon-like base, I am still limited to what I have in the collection of John Blanche paints. So I have decided they are in a cave of some bluish stone. So let's finish this. To start the base, I used Turquoise Mine over all of the base and let it dry. Once the base has fully dried, I used Pine Hollow Shade over the entire base while being careful when near the feet and legs. Let it dry. After that, do some dry brushing. I used Sky Shard for this to give the blue some nice raised details. And finally, a few thin coats of Ironclad Grey all over the base trims, as there is no actual black in the collection. Once all of that is done, your models should look like this. And there you have it, a somewhat niche orc clan against a Blood Angel. Thanks for watching. With Armageddon either right around the corner if you are watching right now on Patreon, or already out and you are getting ready to paint them, I hope this video can be used as a guide for anyone painting this. As always, if you like my stuff and want to see more of it, please do like and subscribe as it does help me in the long run. See you next time for whatever next mini of the month is.